So take a look at this shot right here. What do you notice about this shot that's different from a normal talking head shot like that? There's just this nice, tasteful, subtle movement going on in the background, which adds a whole new dimension of storytelling. Let's talk about sliders. Before we jump into this particular slider, we need to discuss why you might want a slider, because not everybody needs a slider, but if you do have use for one, they're incredibly valuable tools. So to start off with, a slider is an extremely valuable tool if you do a lot of product videos or product B-roll, then getting great hero shots of products with nice movements, subtle pans left, right, push in, pull out. All of those things can be spectacular for making fantastic looking product imagery. And a slider gives you the smoothest possible imagery like that without having to use something like a gimbal. It's extremely difficult to get this close to something, this close to a product, and not see kind of the micro movements of you adjusting the gimbal here and there. Whereas a slider, because it's all pre-programmed and it's all controlled by a computer, can give you these beautiful, incredibly smooth, just incredibly perfect and repeatable shots. And the second reason you might want a slider is if you're somebody who films a lot of interviews. I never use a slider on the A camera, which is the main camera for most interviews, but as a B camera or C camera, a really tight shot or something like that, just to get a little bit of subtle motion. And on this, I really have the slider barely moving at all, but just moving a little bit, so there's some subtle motion, some subtle movement and parallax in the shot. For stuff like this, a slider can be incredibly useful just for giving yourself that other B or C camera angle and having it not be a static shot, because your A camera is going to be static and really just there looking straight at the person, or the person looking straight at it, or just off camera. But the B camera or the C camera can have a little bit of movement to it, and it will really help that shot stand out as something different. And the other reason you might want a slider that I don't use them for that often, but a lot of people do use them for, is time lapses. Having some slow, beautiful, subtle movement in a time lapse really can make a time lapse go from good to great looking, depending on what you have as foreground elements. You've got to get some movement in there somehow. So a slider can give you that if you set it all up correctly. Now, I don't do a lot of that, so I don't have a lot of examples, but I've shown you the stuff that I have done with a slider, and it's been really cool. But if you do a lot of time-lapse stuff, then investing in a slider might be a great way to take your time lapses to a whole different level. Now, in full disclosure, Zeapon sent me this slider to keep and review, but they're not paying me. They don't get any input into this video, and they don't get to see it before it's launched. This is the Zeapon Micro 3, and it's a really nice double distance slider. Now that means you can go a little farther than what you actually have rails for because of the way it slides. So this is the 700mm edition. They have a 1000mm edition, and I think a 500mm edition. You can adjust the tension. So if you want it to be harder to slide or easier to slide, you can adjust it there. Obviously, you can set it on a desk using these tripod or the desk legs here, which is a great way to use it if you're gonna do product stuff. But it also has tripod mounts and support mounts, which makes this really useful. And actually, I've been using this a bunch over the last couple of months. Zeapon sent it to me a few months ago, and I've been using it a bunch just to get some subtle movement. Take a look at these shots here. You can see the locked off shots, like while they look fine, they look great, they're totally usable, but check out the difference when you switch to something that has just a subtle little left to right motion with a bit of a pan in it. It makes a huge difference having a little bit of motion in your shot. Now, not every shot has to have motion, but when you have shots with motion and shots without motion, it helps to differentiate between the two and makes them stand out just a little bit more. So, the Zeapon Micro 3, nice slider, really smooth slides, but the cool part is when you add this, which is the motor attachment here. Now, it attaches right there, super fast, super easy, just a couple of threads down there, and it's attached. You're going to need an MPF style battery, so we'll put that in here. And then once it's turned on, it will pair to the app, which is the way you want to do most of the stuff. Go to the slider, select, go back out, say done. And now you have control over the slider, which means you can control the direction and the distance. You can control the speed. And you can set waypoints. So we want waypoint A to be there. And then let's say we want waypoint B to be there. And then if you're going to hit play, you can have it cycle between those two. And this is where one of the things you need to be aware about this slider comes into play, is the fact that if you're going to use it at speeds 20% or higher, there definitely is some motor noise. So it either needs to be product shots or far enough away from your subject if you're trying to get critical audio to where it's not going to interfere with your audio. But if you're using it at 10, 11, 15%, which is where I use it if I'm going to do interviews, then it's basically silent. So having something slide back and forth is great. Product shots, pushing in, pulling back from products, all of that works well, or coming from behind something to reveal something else. Giving yourself a nice, smooth bit of footage is fantastic. But they also have these, the Pons motorized pan heads, and you can get one that is a horizontal. So we'll put that on down here. And you can get one that's vertical, which means you get this arm, put it in here, lock it down, put this one in here, lock it down, and now all of a sudden you have pan and tilt control, which means you can get much more complex and much cooler looking shots, especially if you're doing product videos where you want to get a really nice stable shot of a product, or you want to maybe just play around a little bit different with getting shots of yourself working around a studio and getting shots that look like somebody's following you as a camera person. A slider can be very useful for those things. This particular slider does have a 4 kg limit, which is about 8.8 pounds. So that's plenty for most mirrorless setups. You can do it vertically. I think you have to do a little bit less weight with that. But you can also do it horizontally, just like this, and do it with a full 8.8 pounds, which pretty much any mirrorless camera is going to be a little bit less than that. Hey, if you're enjoying or getting value out of this video, then consider subscribing. My goal is to help other solo creators like myself make good choices when it comes to buying gear, and also teach you how to use the gear you might already own to tell better stories. This is a really good slider for the price, but there are a couple of things you need to know. One is the noise. If you're going to use it on higher speeds, then you need to be aware, like, you're going to hear motor noise. So if you're using in audio critical areas, it needs to be like 20% or lower. Most of the audio critical areas that I would use this in are interviews. And in those situations, I'm going to be using this at a slower speed anyway, like 5%, maybe 7% of speed. That's going to be it. The other thing you need to be aware of is that it does not have anything to stop it at the end point. So it will go all the way and then hit the end and grind the motor. So you need to be aware of that and make sure that it stops. I hope that in the Micro 4 or whatever the next iteration of this is, they can put some little sensors in there or something to have it kind of stop automatically so that you don't have the chance of accidentally hurting your motors or stripping out a belt or anything like that. But there are compromises to be made for when you're getting this many features on a small, fairly inexpensive slider. Overall, would I recommend this slider? Yes, if you're going to use it within the bounds of what I've said. Interviews at really slow speeds, or product B-roll, pretty much any speed in a non-audio critical area. If you have time to set up a slider shot, time to set shots up that you want to get some movement in or some tracking sort of motion, similar tracking sort of motion, then this system is really difficult to beat. You can get some great shots, you can get some great 3D parallax movement, you can get some great pans and tilts, all of it with this thing, and you can do time lapses. I haven't had the chance to shoot any time lapses with this yet, but it will do time lapses that could give you some really incredible results if you set it up properly. Next, you're going to want to watch this video right here. I'll see you over there. As always, if you have questions, ask me in the comments below, or join my live stream, which happens most Wednesday nights from 4 p.m. Alaska time, 8 p.m. Eastern, where we can have more of a conversation. I can get to questions maybe I didn't answer in this video, or other questions you might have. I'll see you again soon in the next one. Cheers.